If you look around your home and see a photography camera gathering dust, half-finished canvases in the corner, a guitar you haven't touched in 6 months, a stack of language learning books, and a sudden new obsession with pottery, you probably carry a specific type of shame. People call you flaky. They ask why you can't just stick with one thing. You feel like a commitment failure, hopping from passion to passion without ever becoming truly great at anything. Society has convinced you that this pattern is a character flaw. But psychology reveals something radically different. You're not broken. You're what researchers call a cyclical scanner, and your brain operates on a rhythm that linear thinkers will never understand. Before we break down what's actually happening in your brain, drop a comment telling me where you're watching from. Here's the lie you've been sold. Real commitment means lifelong devotion to one pursuit. Real mastery means never stopping. But your brain doesn't work that way. And here's what cognitive science shows. Cyclical scanners don't abandon hobbies. They complete learning cycles. You're not quitting photography. You extracted what your brain needed from it, and now you're in a dormant phase. The hobby isn't dead, it's resting. Understanding the cyclical pattern. So here's what actually happens. You discover something new, let's say woodworking. For 3 months, you're completely obsessed. You watch every tutorial, buy the tools, spend every weekend building things. You're learning at an accelerated rate, your dopamine system is firing, and you feel alive. Then, suddenly, the interest vanishes. You don't even want to look at the workshop. Most people interpret this as failure. But research on cyclical learning patterns shows this is actually your brain completing a growth phase and entering integration mode. During the obsession phase, you were in active acquisition, downloading skills, building neural pathways, creating new cognitive structures. When the interest drops, you're not losing passion, you're consolidating learning. Psychology calls this the cyclical mastery model. You need dormancy to process what you learned. And here's the fascinating part. 6 months later, maybe a year later, the photography interest comes back. But when it returns, you're not starting over. You're building on an integrated foundation. Each cycle goes deeper. You're not scattered, you're spiraling upward. Why your brain does this? Your brain is wired for what researchers call domain rotation. While specialists drill one hole deeper and deeper, you're building a network of interconnected competencies. And there's a neurological reason this happens. Studies on novelty-seeking behavior show that cyclical scanners have dopamine systems that require variation to maintain engagement. Your brain doesn't just want depth, it wants breadth and depth across multiple domains. When you rotate between hobbies, you're not being unfaithful to your interests. You're feeding a cognitive system that needs diverse stimulation to function optimally. And here's what makes you invaluable. When you return to photography after spending 6 months deep in music theory, you bring those musical concepts with you. Rhythm, composition, pattern, they transfer. Your photography improves not because you practiced it, but because you understood something adjacent. That's creative synthesis that specialists can't access. But here's the crushing part. The world worships specialists. People ask, "What do you do?" And they want one answer. When you say, "Well, I'm into photography, but I also play guitar, and lately I've been learning Python and getting into urban gardening," their eyes glaze over. They think you're unfocused. What they don't understand is that you're not building a career in the traditional sense. You're building a Renaissance skill stack. You're becoming someone who can solve problems from multiple angles, who brings unexpected perspectives, who sees connections others miss. In a world increasingly dominated by AI and automation, that synthesis ability is becoming the most valuable human skill. You're not behind because you haven't mastered one thing. You're ahead because you're mastering the art of integration. How to actually live this way? So here's the practical strategy. Stop fighting the cycle. Instead, track it. Notice your rotation pattern. Maybe you do 3-month intensive phases. Maybe it's 6 months. Maybe it's seasonal. Once you understand your rhythm, you can design your life around it instead of constantly feeling guilty. Create what I call hobby seasons. Give yourself full permission to obsess over pottery for 4 months. Don't buy a lifetime membership to the studio. Rent time. Go all in without the long-term commitment pressure. When the interest fades, don't panic. Archive the materials, document what you learned, and trust that it'll come back when your brain is ready. And here's the key. Keep a rotation log. Write down what you learned in each cycle. Because when you look back after 2 years, you'll see you're not scattered. You're constructing something coherent that only you can build. If you're a cyclical scanner, stop apologizing for your graveyard of hobbies. Those aren't failures. They're chapters in a book only you are writing. You were never meant to be monogamous with your interests. You're built to be a bridge between worlds, pulling from music, art, code, philosophy, and craft to create something nobody else can imagine. Drop a comment telling me which hobbies are currently active in your rotation and which ones are dormant. And if you want the research on how to structure your cycles without burning out, you're not broken. You're just operating on a different timeline than the people around you, and that's exactly what makes you irreplaceable.